Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is that time of year again. Our virtual numbers are going to be reset, and we are tasked with the challenge of proving our worth all over again, totally from scratch. So last season, I recalibrated to about rank 50. Then, after a week, once all the dust had settled and the large majority of people had calibrated, I was closer to rank 80, maybe rank 90. And I was pretty happy with that recalibration, mostly because I only won 6 out of 10 of my recalibration games, and I still went up about 100 ranks, so I was pretty happy with that. Throughout the season, I've naturally made some new observations, I should say, involving MMR, and had some new thoughts about the topic of recalibration. Moreover, and arguably more importantly, I've received some confirmation on whether the rules that I followed for MMR and recalibration actually work, just from talking to people, trying things out myself. Thus, given all of that, I wanted to make this video, essentially documenting what my personal plans are going into the recalibration matches of next season. So, essentially, this will be somewhat of an updated recalibration guide for the next season. So, my first rule, and arguably the most important rule for me, is to play only 3 or so heroes. So really restrict my hero list, even if it's boring. The heroes that I plan on playing are going to be Sven, Beastmaster, and Skywrath Mage, given that there's not a huge balance patch. The reason that I have selected these heroes is because I looked at my Dota buff, and I looked at my win rate in the 7.20 patch with whatever heroes I had an actual decent amount of games played. Like, I wasn't considering, heroes that I played 1 or 2 times and had a 100% win rate. It's kind of, useless information. But in any case, I would highly recommend that you also check out your own Dota buff and filter by win rate and then the current patch. To be honest, it may surprise you what you see in there. In fact, just checking these stats out occasionally throughout the season is a pretty solid strategy for winning a lot more than other people, because you get an objective look at what you're good with and what you're bad with, and most people are biased, very biased. In general, I would say that a lot of the time, people are actually a lot more talented at doing things than they think they are. Or a lot of the time, they are much worse at the things that they think they are good at. It seems to be one of the extremes. You're either very good at something and you don't realize it, or you're very bad at something and you don't realize it. What's important is taking that difficult step about being realistic with your talents. And then only then is when you can capitalize on your strengths and also fix your weaknesses. And obviously that is very true for Dota as well. So number 2, the second rule that I'm going to follow. If there's a huge balance patch, even like a small balance patch, or I think that the meta is going to shift, like after the major or minor, for example, I'm going to play party queue or unranked until other people have figured out the meta. Then I'm going to learn and pick the broken heroes to play my recalibration games once I actually know what is broken. The basic argument for this is very simple. At the start of the meta, everything is complete chaos. Nobody really knows what's going on, and as a result, even great players have their win rate pushed down towards like 50%. Like, Arteezy will lose a lot of games just because the meta is in complete disarray. So everything is chaos, nobody really knows what's happening, and a bunch of games are just random. So, basically, first I want to understand the meta so I know what heroes are strong and why they're strong. Then I'm going to play the game. And figuring out what heroes are strong and why they're strong is much more painful than just letting the community figure it out. It's actually a very simple argument. I'd rather let other people fail with awful heroes on stream, in live games, etc., and lose their MMR rather than losing mine and doing that exact same process. To give an example, I lost a shitload of MMR with Storm Spirit right at the start of this patch, and that's because I thought he was still a fine hero, but now, after the dust has settled, he's the lowest win rate hero in the Immortal bracket in Dota, and most people wouldn't even consider picking him in a serious game. So my third rule that I'm going to follow is I'm not going to recalibrate all in one day. In my recalibration games in particular, I basically plan on playing as if it's a competitive match, which means I'm going to pick the absolute best hero possible, even if it's boring. I'm going to try my hardest, even if the game is very toxic, and I'm going to think actively about the game, all game. No alt tabs, no Steam messages, nothing like that. Complete focus on the game. I also plan on communicating everything that I can to my team as if it's a competitive match, and I'm going to instantly mute people that inevitably tell me to shut the fuck up, because people do. But you mute them, you keep doing it because other people will benefit from your communication. The problem is, realistically, in order to accomplish all of this, I need a lot of energy, and I need a lot of self-control. And I think that is true for most people, both of which mainly come from being motivated to play the game. So as a result, I know that my daily limit to exhaust that much energy into the game is probably 2 or 3 matches realistically. The only reason that I'd continue to play after that is not because I genuinely want to play, but because the game is sucking me into its addictive cycle, which would lead to severe MMR loss, which is sometimes fine, don't get me wrong. We're gamers. We play games because it's just what we do. But it's certainly not fine for recalibration matches, in particular, to suffer from that addictiveness of the game. So my 4th rule, and the final rule, is if I lose one game, I'm going to stop queuing for at least 10 minutes, especially if there are griefers, flamers, or players that I don't mesh with in the game. And the intent of this is twofold. I want, number one, to mentally reset myself from an otherwise frustrating game, so I don't go into another game and then play based on emotion instead of logic, or play based on what should have happened in the previous game instead of subjectively thinking about the new game. And number two, I want to avoid a queue cycle with the same players that just resulted in a bad game. The argument for this is very obvious if you have toxic players on your team or on the enemy team. You obviously don't want to queue into toxic people and just have the game left up to random chance. But even simply players that you don't mesh with are not great to queue into again. For example, if you queue into 3 offlaners and you're an offlane player, then you're going to struggle in a game where you get them again because you have a bunch of people who need to play roles that they don't fully understand. On the flip side, if I get a good team or a good queue cycle, like of a bunch of non-toxic players, even if I lose, if the game was really good, I'm going to look to keep queuing into that group of players if I can. So that's it. Those are my rules. Those are the big ones, I should say, unless there's anything that I'm blatantly forgetting. Obviously, the general MMR rules still apply for me. I think they should always apply, but these are 4 rules that I'm personally considering the most important to keep in mind for myself in this recalibration. Maybe for you, you don't struggle with these things and you have other resolutions for recalibration. In any case, let me know in the comments below what your plans are. I'm very interested and what you think of my plans. Thanks so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I hope to see you in another video.